This is the Oppo Reno 3 Pro, and it offers some incredible specs at a mid-range asking price. I'm talking about a 6.4-inch Super AMOLED display, 6 cameras, plus a whopping 4025 mAh battery. But is it any good? Well, let's find out in this video here on EMKWAN Reviews. So once we unbox the Oppo Reno 3 Pro, we're going to find inside the standard paperwork, SIM ejector tool, and Oppo have been kind enough to also include a see-through silicone case to help protect the device. Now digging a little deeper, you're going to find the 30-watt VOC fast charger. This is a 4.0 along with a charging cable. Now this is a standard USB to USB-C cable, and Oppo have also included a pair of wired headphones. This will go in with the 3.5mm headphone jack that's also found on this device. It still looks like a modern device. To begin with, you've got this Gorilla Glass 5 on the front, and then on the back, it's more like a plastic polycarbonate kind of feel, but I love the way that the light reflects on this particular color. This Aurora blue really looks stunning. It's quite nice to see that the light does start from the bottom corner where the Oppo branding is. If we look around the device, you can see at the bottom, you've got the 3.5mm headphone jack, you've got the USB-C charging port and the bottom speakers. Right side, you've got the power on off button. The left has the volume rocker with the SIM tray, and then the top is flushed. Now once you turn that device around, you'll notice on the front the beautiful Super AMOLED display. It's a 6.4-inch display with a dual camera cutout on the top left hand side, so there's no more notch styling for this display. Plus, that dual camera on the front can be used for face unlock, and underneath that display you also have a fingerprint scanner that can be used to unlock your device. So you've got both methods of security for the Oppo Reno 3 Pro. Now that display for the most part is actually a nice display. It's got good brightness, it's got good vibrancy, saturation. In the hand, the Oppo Reno 3 Pro does feel like a tall phone, but it's incredibly comfortable to use with one hand. The fact that that display is a flat display and not a curved display, you have a case on there should be no problems with how this device feels in your hands. So in terms of performance, I've been using this for a while now, and it has the MediaTek P95 octa-core chipset. This is essentially a bump up from the previous generation P90, and it does do a good job, particularly because it's focused around gaming and performance. So I tested this out with a range of different applications, and it did a good job all round. Also, day-to-day sort of multitasking, the things that you would expect from an Android device, it did perfectly fine. This is paired up with 8GB of RAM, so you should have no issues in terms of lag or issues around performance. As well as that, this works really well with Android 10, which comes pre-installed right out of the box, plus Oppo's latest Color OS 7. And I have to say, I like how Oppo have made this a much more simplistic, clean, and almost Android stock-like experience. So there is still that level of customization if you need it, but right out of the box, Color OS 7 gives you a much more cleaner feel, and this is nice to see in the Oppo Reno 3 Pro. Under the hood, you're going to find a 4025 mAh battery. Now that's not unusual in terms of a battery capacity for a size device like this, but with the Oppo Reno 3 Pro, it's got really good battery life, and I think that's down to two reasons. Number one is that power-saving Helio P95 chipset, but as well as this, you've got a ton of different customization within the OS, and Oppo are pretty good at doing this. So, you know, for me, in terms of my use while I was using this, just over average, I was getting about a day and a half worth of use, which is really good. Plus, in that box, you get that included 30-watt VOC fast charge. So that means that just shy of 30 minutes, you're going to get about 60% battery life. And if you want to charge it from 0 to 100, that's going to take you just over an hour slightly, which is incredible. Next, let's talk about the other standout feature on the Oppo Reno 3 Pro, and that is the total of 6 cameras. So on the back you have a quad camera setup made up of a 64 megapixel main sensor, that's an aperture f1.7, a 13 megapixel f2.4 telephoto with 2x optical zoom, we have an 8 megapixel ultra wide with f2.2, and finally a 2 megapixel depth with aperture f2.4. Now, the quad camera setup on the back does a generally good job when it comes to image quality. You'll notice that in daylight, in normal lighting, the images actually appear quite nice. There is on occasion some oversaturation and sometimes overexposure on the images, but for the most part it does a good job. Ultra wide, 1x, 2x, 5x all perform really well. I do think it struggles a little when it comes to the 5x onwards. So at a maximum of 20x zoom, you'll notice there's just a lot of noise and distortion. Now, this does have a 64 megapixel main sensor, but by default it bins images down to 16 megapixel. There is an option within the settings to use to the maximum ability that main sensor, and the images taken are pretty good. You'll notice there's a lot of details, particularly when you zoom in. It's nice to see this option available for those of you that want to maximize the use of that main sensor, but I think for most people the standard will be just as fine. Now, in terms of low light, things get a little tricky here. So there is a night mode within the camera app, and that will allow you to take images in low light situations, and I think at 1x and 2x the camera does a good job, but it really struggles in ultra wide and anything that's zoomed in. So 5x onwards, you'll notice there's just a lot of noise and distortion for low light images. Now, as far as video is concerned, it will record video up to a maximum of 4K at 30 frames per second. So this is a little test of what the video looks like in daylight on the Oppo Reno 3 Pro. And as you can see, we're starting off with ultra wide. Gonna zoom in at 1x, and then we'll try at 2x. And then let's get closer to the window. This is what 5x zoom looks like. Pretty good actually. But then we can maximize the zoom, that's 10x there, and then 20x all the way over there. Let me know what you think of the quality, but also what you think of the overall color saturation and the audio as well. Let me know what you think of that. Pretty good. The front-facing camera can record video up to 1080p at 30 frames per second, and that's made up of that dual selfie camera, a 44 megapixel wide with an f2.4 coupled with a 2 megapixel f2.4 depth. Still think the camera on the Oppo Reno 3 Pro is actually a pretty decent camera, particularly when you consider this price point. So what are my final thoughts having used the Oppo Reno 3 Pro for a while now? Well, here's the thing. I think the device covers majority of the bases that you would come to expect from a mid-range smartphone. The standout features for me have to be that display. If you're okay with the punch hole cutout design, then that 6.4 inch Super AMOLED display is going to please. As well as that, I think the camera on this for most situations and scenarios at this price point is going to appeal, and the battery life is going to be seriously good, because that 4025 milliamp hour battery paired up with the battery performance on the chipset and the OS means that you're going to be able to get some really good battery life if that's important to you. Now, Oppo as a brand have continued over the years to do this, offer great specs at a price point, and I think the Oppo Reno 3 Pro certainly fits that bill. Now, if you can get your hands on a good deal for the Oppo Reno 3 Pro, then I think it's worth considering this device if you're looking for a mid-range smartphone. But ultimately, I'd love to know what you think, so take this opportunity, leave your comments in the comments section down below. And if you're new around here, I'd love for you to join me on my journey here on YouTube, so smash that subscribe button and hit like if you've enjoyed this video. Until next time, I'm EMKWAN with the Oppo Reno 3 Pro. I'll see you soon. Peace and blessings.